All right, yes. So I'm here to talk about some literacy. We've been talking about literacy in the context of English as a language, of learning and instruction. I'm going to talk about literacy in the context of data. What we've been doing in LRSD for some time now is the slides I've put together are slides folks have used in LRSD to talk about data literacy for a few years. Sometime before the pandemic hit, and slides we even entertained using during the pandemic, and slides we continue to use to this day. Just so that we have an understanding about what it is I'm suggesting here, we need to come to terms with a definition. So we defined, in 2016, we looked to some research and agreed on a definition in LRSD, what we mean by data literacy. And here's a definition that suggests it's the ability to ask and answer real-world questions, or the way Dr. Williams put it this morning, the question being, well, no, we describe the question in LRSD as what is our greatest area of need, but you called it a wicked problem. Right. Sorry, a worthy, wicked problem? Is that what he said? Oh, you said worthy. Okay. So we can come up with our acronyms. We love to do that. We're teachers. So we added to your acronym, wicked problem, a WP, a worthy wicked problem, a WWP. We call them in LRSD greatest areas of need. Yeah, right. So we love our acronyms. So data literacy is about that ability to look into those, try to problem solve those wicked problems, meet those greatest areas of need by using data from large and small data sets. And you're doing that through an inquiry process. You're asking lots of questions. The data just leads to more questions and more data, with consideration of ethical use of data, understanding its limitations, but also understanding how potentially dangerous data can be when misused, misinterpreted. So it's all of these things that this definition captured for us, and will be at the heart of my conversation with you this afternoon, and I'm going to really try to make it a conversation. So I'm going to first try to understand the room I'm in. Who are we? So I know who I am. I'm from LRSD. Who else is from LRSD? I know, because I know them. But who is from Frontier School Division? Okay. I thought many more of you were from Frontier School Division. Who's from Portage-La Prairie School Division? Okay, I thought more than though. Okay, a lot of people are going to have to tell me where they're from. I know some are from government. All right. So what do I know about the rest of you? Some are from the Learning Bar. All right, and now the rest of you have got to tell me where you're from. Where are you from? DSFM? La DSFM est ici. Je pourrais parler en français, mais on ne va pas faire ça. All right. Interlake? River East Transcona? Rolling River? Winnipeg? Pembina Trails? Borderland? St. James? Seven Oaks? Okay, good stuff. So it's a mix. More of a mix than I realized over here. All right, Saskatchewan is here. Okay, super. All right, so we're going to talk more than just listen. All of us. So, just like we went looking for a definition about a definition as it relates to our data literacy journey, as a bunch of teachers. Some of us are superintendents, others are principals and vice principals, but we were all teachers in a classroom at some point in time, or still are. We also talked about, went looking for a theory around this whole idea of data literacy and a theory of change. And the one we landed on that we really liked is what the Open Data Institute suggests about data and a theory of change. So what they talk about is how when looking to data, using data, leveraging data, there are three tendencies. And so those three tendencies are, some of us are, and we can be all three things at times. I'm all three. Some of us are sometimes data hoarders. We treat data like oil, like a commodity, and it's about power and control. And that can be a really dangerous thing. And isn't using data to understand what the wicked problem is in order to solve that wicked problem. Your use of data becomes the wicked problem we all need to try to solve for. The other tendency can be to fear data and to even couch that fear or to suggest that it's all relative. And there isn't really a there isn't really a way to know the complexity of it all. And so we fear data. We ignore data. And so those tendencies are very real. I'm dealing with them all the time, with myself and with the colleagues I work with in LRSD and outside of LRSD. And what our data literacy journey is about in LRSD is to not hoard data, not fear data, but look to see that data can lead to a positive change. So this is so very real, isn't it? We talked about PISA results earlier today, and we have this dilemma in Manitoba. Some of us are data hoarders relative to PISA and are telling an incorrect story about what PISA is saying in that hoarding of data. And we're using it for ideological aims, nothing to do with teaching and learning. And others are fearful of that data and want to know nothing of it. So we look to others always, but we come up with our own stuff too. We don't just adopt, we adapt what we learn from others. And so we even have a logo in LRSD to describe our data literacy initiative and get excited about it. And so we've made some commitments over the years to each other as it relates to our data literacy. What we strive to be in LRSD as teachers. And that is we strive to be data-informed, data-ready, data-confident, and data stewards, so that we avoid falling into the trap of being data hoarders or data fearful. And so it's all about helping rather than harming. It's all about having the best information and tools at our fingertips. It's about evidence informing hunches. It's about seeing data as a flashlight, not a hammer. And having the knowledge, the skills, the mindset to feel data literate. So turn and talk. Associate a number to a letter. Yeah. So at your tables, turn and talk, associate a number to a letter. Helping rather than harming. What would that be? So chat. Don't do it alone. Talk. I need to hear talking. Lots of talking. Okay, that's enough talking. Why is it doing this animation? Okay, here we go. We could argue on these answers, by the way. We can argue about the answers, but we don't have time. At least I activated a bit of your thinking. All right. So, another way of looking at our data literacy initiative and what we're trying to achieve. We're trying in LRSD, all of us, teachers, EAs, superintendents, principals, vice principals, trustees. We're wanting to get better at making decisions by being inquisitive, collaborative, and discerning when using data. That's what the Data Literacy Initiative is also about. Another way of describing it. All of us wanting to get better at making decisions by being curious, collaborative, and discerning when using data. So here's an example of that. Here's a data report that we've built. So this is why I'm in the middle of the room. Some of you are going to want to look that way, and some of you are going to want to look that way to see what I'm describing. So, and if you are struggling to see it, go to lrsd.net and go looking for it yourself. So this is a public report available for everyone to see. And it's about the enrollment in LRSD as of, I did this, I took a screenshot on Sunday. I was thinking maybe I'll just go to the reports today, show you some of our data, but thought it wiser to just take screenshots and do this. But it's on the website. And so here we're showing something about who we are in LRSD. There are on Friday, I took a screenshot on Sunday. On Friday of last week, there were 16,760 students in LRSD across 40 schools, 12 grades, a kindergarten grade, and some labeling there, SC and SS. We love our acronyms in LRSD and in public education. And so you see that here. That's what I'm showing here. Now, I want to talk about the data literacy conversation I had on Tuesday night of this week with trustees and a parent who was listening in at the board meeting. And it was about this. I was giving a quarterly update on enrollment in LRSD. And I knew I had a parent listening in who's been asking of late, tell me about those international student program students in your schools. She was saying, look, there are ethical dilemmas when a public school system decides to run an international student program. You know, her argument might be, I'm not sure what her argument is, but if I were her and curious about this, my curiosity would be that ethical dilemma of a public sector entity running a business to generate revenue, and how we might be feeding the beast of those who, knowingly or unknowingly, are undermining the funding of public education, the public sector, by entertaining the privatization of that public school system, that public sector. I don't know that was her driving concern. I think her driving concern was, hey, these kids that are coming from, that you're bringing in, that are international students from all over, they might be taking up resources and room in our schools. And that's a problem. I know that was that is her issue. And rightfully so. Again, there are ethical issues here. So we were having this conversation at the board meeting on Tuesday. So I extracted those international student program students from that overall enrollment and was able to show her where these students are across 40 schools and across the grades, and provide some insight into the international student program that we run and its demographic impact in LRSD. And made a promise to her that in the next couple of weeks, she'll be able to filter, anyone in the world will be able to filter on that information on our website. And so back to those data literacy commitments, back to that theory of change, data hoarding. One of our big initiatives in LRSD is to make available to the public data, to not be data hoarders, and to do it in a way that allows those who are inquisitive, and they should be, discerning about that data, the ability to click. So the one thing I'm not able to show you here, it's just screenshot after screenshot, is how one can click on any of the parts of the visualization to explore and try to make sense of the data. Why was I also talking with trustees about enrollment and data in trying to make some really important decisions? Well, one of the stories I've been one of the data stories I've been sharing with the senior leadership team, with principals and vice principals, with the community, in different forums the last little while is the unprecedented growth we're seeing this year. So what this data is showing, internally, not externally, is enrollment patterns over the last few years. And the number that's really had us feeling a lot of pressure this year is 487. The difference in enrollment since September 30th or 29th, when we sent a number to the province relative to our enrollment. So it's the biggest I've ever seen it. 487 new students have arrived since that date, and we're only February. And so this unprecedented growth that has resulted in our spending, all of the extra dollars we benefited from in Manitoba this year that came to us after the funding announcement in February 2022. We got all kinds of dollars that came to us in the spring and in the fall. And we've spent all those dollars in LRSD hiring additional teachers, additional EAs, clinicians, like you were sharing earlier this morning. And of course, your dilemma is, your problem is even more wicked than mine, in that I'm worried about failing to fill substitute teachers. You're worrying about teachers. And so we have a serious problem. And the data is telling us we need an equivalent response. So what we've had to do as an SLT is convince the board to allow us to spend $500,000 from our surplus to hire more teachers for the next 5 months. And I was able to convince them to have the courage to do that by developing their data literacy and being on this data literacy journey with trustees, with senior leaders, and with the community we serve. Because it is about class size. And those who say class size doesn't matter haven't been in a classroom. It's as simple as that. If you suggest class size isn't a thing, you haven't been in a classroom. And so it's been about class size for some time now in LRSD because it took a lot to get to where we were able to get. So I'm going way back to another party in government saying 20K3. We have an objective. We have a target. We need to get to no more than 20 students in a kindergarten grade 1, 2, 3 class. Problem is, we're not going to help you fund it. We've given you a problem to solve, but we're not going to help you with how you make that happen. So what resulted was shifting dollars around. Moving dollars from other places, paying other people to do work in order to have enough to pay more teachers to get class size down. And so ever since, having lived through what that meant, we've kept that up. We've made it a focus. And so you can see here how we're tracking class averages across schools in elementary K to 8. And of course, we don't want, see, this could easily happen, right? A 20K3 initiative can lead to a 4 to 8 initiative that's headed in the opposite direction. Smaller class size, 20K3, bigger class size, 4 to 8, 9 to 12. And we want to avoid that at all costs. And so we're adding teachers. We're hiring teachers right now for what's left of February, March to June, in order to address what we're seeing here: a school, a classroom, a grade where the numbers are high, and it's also, of course, about composition in that classroom, the students in that classroom and their needs. And so another acronym, we love our acronyms. Here you see in that third column of data some of the students shaded in blue because they're on the SIS. And what does that mean in LRSD to be on the SIS? No, not the Student Information System. That's a problem, though, because I know. And SIS has a universal meaning, Student Information System, but and it does mean that in LRSD, but it means something else also in LRSD. What does it mean in this context? The support intensity scale. So we have a support intensity scale in LRSD that we've worked on as part of our data literacy initiative for many, many years, agreeing on the supports students need. And it's a very dynamic scale. Well, at least I hope it is. I worry that it isn't. It should be. The support intensity should be dynamic. Less support intensity over time. More independence and autonomy over time. Problem is, if you're not looking at it carefully, it's kind of fossilized. It isn't dynamic. Once on the support intensity scale, forever on the support intensity scale. And that just can't be. So it's complex. It's a complex problem because it's a worthy, wicked problem. I'm trying to activate everyone's thinking. And we look at it over time as well. We look at all of this work at trying to keep class size reasonable and class composition dynamic in a healthy way. So enough about that. Little story about data literacy with trustees and a superintendent and a senior leadership team about spending accumulated surplus dollars. By the way, something that cannot continue. This has got to be once in a lifetime. It's the first time we've done it in 20 years of existence. Ever. I've been there. I know it for a fact. And this cannot continue. I'm afraid it's going to continue for a little while longer. Anyways, our data literacy initiative is also about connecting more big ideas. Marnie, our divisional vice principal of data literacy, Marnie Wilson, likes to call this the Holy Grail, Christian. We'll get here someday. It's the Holy Grail. So here we're one commitment we're making is to connect big ideas. And so and how data is a part of the glue we're trying to make, the connections we're trying to make. It's the idea that we need to learn more about who we are, our identities as teachers and learners, as people in community together, learning and growing. We need to dig deep to understand how are we doing relative to learning. And so lots of data there. It's all data, by the way. It's data related to well-being and that connection, learning and well-being. How if one isn't learning, one isn't well. If one isn't well, one isn't learning. And trying to measure our impact. How are we making it better? Through our collaborative learning cycles. We've learned a lot. We've stepped away from professional learning communities or and so we call them collaborative learning cycles. So a culture we're trying to build in LRSD, like we are all doing across Winnipeg and Manitoba and Canada, is having teachers. It's non-negotiable. It's a part of doing. It's what it is to teach in community, on a team, and to be learning, and to have that learning, again, be collaborative learning on a team, and tied to student learning. And it's the idea that it's cyclical as well. You're trying to affect small change relative to what learners need and what you need to learn as a practitioner, and seeing that small move make a difference, and many small moves leading to big, sustained change. And so we've got all kinds of ways of framing that collaborative learning cycle we want all teachers to be on, alongside their principals and vice principals. And so examples of that would be our early literacy project, and data we look to there is the I and DA and TA and the CTOP2, and I could go on. Our writing project, our numeracy project, our thinking project. It's called the Reading Apprenticeship, but I call it the Thinking Project, because that's what the Reading Apprenticeship is really about. And our DEI and Anti-Racism Initiative, the class size and dynamics I've just talked about. How we staff student services and their core competencies and responsibilities. We have a full-day K initiative, and we're trying to measure the impact of that and trying to convince Manitobans we should have full-day K, and it should be universal like it is in so many other parts of the world. That's enough of that. I'm still arguing this. I can't believe that I'm still arguing this in 2023. It's insane. And on I could go. So it's about connecting all of that. And so I'm going to go on now for a little bit about some of that work, okay? So it starts with who we are, and it starts with our diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism initiative and services. Because I think what I would add to what we heard earlier this morning about all of the competencies we're trying to develop in children, in ensuring prosperity, a flourishing, a thriving of all learners. The one piece that is missing is the cultural understandings, the cultural transformation that we need to see and has still to take root in our schools and in society. We need each and every child to be an anti-racist. And as long as, and I believe fundamentally that this is also one of the key ingredients to seeing the change we're talking about today, and addressing the injustice, the social injustice, the historical injustice, the oppression that's at the heart, that explains the disparity that we see and has yet to change. I've been a teacher since the 80s. We've been talking about all of this for as long as I've been a teacher. But nothing is changing. The disparity, I mean. We haven't been talking about anti-racism all that time. We have to acknowledge systemic racism is deeply rooted in our school systems to this day, and that has got to be an essential element of it all. So, it starts by asking ourselves who we are in LRSD. And so back to that report, that dashboard, that you can go to if you go to lrsd.net right now, if you want to click away with me. We are asking ourselves, it starts by asking, who are we? So how many of our students self-declare their Indigenous status? And so that's 14.7%, or that was on Friday of last week. And we can see how that translates across the grades and the schools. And here we're doing pretty good. When we compare the data we're collecting in our schools and the data collected by Stats Canada and others, it appears that it's taken a long time to get here. It appears that we've built the trust in community for folks to self-identify. We're not there yet, but when we triangulate with many different data sets, it appears that we're really in a good place. More recently, what we've been doing is asking more relative to cultural identity. Who identifies as Indigenous, Black, or of color in LRSD? Who identifies as white? I identify as white. And that's a journey, because not everyone wants to identify. But we have to. It starts here. We have to identify. We can't talk about anti-racism. We can't talk about addressing social injustice without that baseline of data. It's our work, and it's hard work. And relative to racialized identity, relative to ethnocultural identity is also linguistic identity. And here again, lots of work to do. Lots of work to do. Because for some, an additional language is seen as a problem. And not the amazing richness that it is. And I fear that still to this day, we are pathologizing some students who have language. It's just not the language you're talking and using as a classroom teacher. And that's a problem. It's skewing the data. Our data is not as discerning as it should be. Because we're not able to measure language capacity. We refuse to measure that linguistic capacity because of our inability to actually measure that linguistic capacity and leverage it to make all the difference in the world. So all of this is on our website for you to explore. Internally, here's the journey around identity. So let's go back to 2014-15. And how many are not identifying? The dark blue, the first column in a row of columns. And where we are today. But again, this is not easy work. This has required lots and lots of dialogue with families over time, building trust, to get folks to identify. Now, I'm trying to do the same thing with staff. And we're a lot less further along than we are here with families. Again, because of how challenging this conversation is. A conversation about identity, about race, about systemic racism, and asking staff to identify. But it's a must, because it's a baseline. Without this, we can't be data discerning and data literate. Here is some more information. You remember back when I shared a slide ago about the enrollment explosion that we're dealing with right now, having us dip into accumulated surplus. Thankfully, we have an accumulated surplus to dip into. What would we do if I couldn't find that $500,000 to hire more staff right now? Here is the newcomer enrollment. New newcomers as of July 2022, 541 newcomers in LRSD since July. Again, it's a beautiful thing. The migration patterns have come back after the pandemic. Canada will not grow, will not flourish without welcoming more newcomers. It's just not going to happen. It's a good thing. This should not be seen as a problem, but it is by some. For some parents in LRSD, this is a problem. For some staff in LRSD, this is a problem. The fact that this is a problem for these people is a problem for me. It's a problem to me. And relative to students for whom English is not their first language, again, some data and some numbers. The net difference in enrollment since September of this year of students who are new, for whom English is not their first language. Another diversity I want to talk about briefly before my time runs out. I have so many more slides. And I've just touched on identity, but it starts there. Is back to that support intensity scale. This trying to figure out collectively and come to some collective understandings about the needs some students express, well, any student can express at any given time. It's something so complex, so dynamic, so fluid, or it should be, if it isn't. That's also been a part of our data literacy initiative. And so here's an example of it. I didn't know St. George School was showing up, but they are. So I'm showing it divisionally here for all schools, and I thought these reports aren't online, by the way. And I show it here for a school, and St. George is in the room. I hadn't anticipated that. And so this is the number that at this moment in time, St. George School have identified on this support intensity scale. Dakota's in the room today. I didn't know they were coming. I happened to just choose Dakota Collegiate as a high school where I can show some of this data. And so if I'm showing it all to you right now, its distribution across schools, is that it is about mapping that information onto other pieces of information. Racialized identity, the number of students that are chronically absent in our schools, the mobility in our schools, the number of students who identify as English as an additional language in our schools, and that very first column to the left, schools on the socioeconomic status, rated by socioeconomic status. It's about understanding in each of our schools the dynamics at play that are ever-changing, to understand, for us as a senior leadership team, along with our trustees, checking in, as they should, in their governance role, ensuring that with the finite resources we have, we're ensuring those resources are being provided to schools in an equity-based way. I've run out of time. I was going to go on to other pieces of information that we can only get to by going first, by looking first, asking ourselves first about identity. This is also on our website. So we share on our website report card data. And how students are doing, and relative to that report card data. And again, understanding the next series of slides required me to have you spend a little time with me understanding the work we're doing around identity and belonging before we can start to interpret and talk about outcomes, like learning outcomes and targets we want for those learning outcomes. But I'm going to end it there. I have more to share if ever you want to chat again about identity, learning, well-being, and measuring our impact relative to those. Okay, thanks for listening.
Any questions for Christian?
I got them to talk a little. Maybe they will ask a question.
Yeah, maybe.
Yes. St. James.
I'm just wondering how you ask students to identify as part of the IB-POC community. Is it on registration forms?
That's right. Registration forms, parents. Yep. Parents. But a dialogue at school with students, especially as they get older and have their autonomy and independence, that can also inform that. Because you also saw in our around gender identity, you saw on, and you can see it for yourself on our website, those students who identify as gender fluid. And that often is a tricky dialogue around identity, students, and families. Yes, and so I'm desperately trying to convince staff to identify and trust, because that's absolutely a part of our initiative. I do believe that we need to diversify our teacher workforce if we're going to see the change we need to see. It starts with belonging. We said it right from the beginning. Identity, culture. And so if your identity and culture is undervalued in the school system, in so much of what we talk about, I don't know how we expect anything to change. It won't. It can't. Yes?
Cultural identity stats for staff, and how do you compare that to those of students?
So I do. I don't have it here to share,
okay,
but I do. But it's what I can also show you is we're still on a journey to get all staff to identify.
Okay, no problem. And then talking about your...
Because we're not making it compulsory, because the lawyer's saying I can't. But anyway.
Yeah. No, it should be voluntary. It should be self-declared. So,
no, I think it should be compulsory. Honestly, I wish we could just say, no. You want to teach, this is the journey we're on, identify.
Yeah, and then
anyway.
You can say...
because parents don't have a problem, right? I'm saying, you're registering for school in LRSD, you got to identify.
And then about your ethics, if you approach that the way you should, you might be getting some money from the education system that is under.
Well, we are, and it's why I can go to the trustees and say, let me spend $500,000. But that money was never supposed to be operationalized. That money is supposed to be about doing extra, doing more, not paying for what's basic and essential. It was never about paying teacher salaries and EA salaries. And never was until this point in time.
I really like the way data is a kind of currency. And then how do you go with data rate? So what do you do to help everybody from data integrity collection to those dashboards? How do you do to improve your
Yeah, well, it's
with data so you can get it.
well, it's been just that, right? Building all of that capacity and the small team that does a lot of that data collecting, data cleaning, data analyzing, and leading to some data visualization. So this is all internal. So the one thing we said from the start was there were no consultants out there that were willing to do it in the ways I see the Learning Bar working with schools, alongside wanting to build capacity in the client. On the data side, people don't want to build your data capacity because we're data hoarders. And they don't want you capable. They'd much rather have that be their work. And that's got to change.
I also think we have spent a lot of time working with teachers and talking about the data that they have within their classrooms to help them guide their practice. And so this is the larger view of the data, but teachers realizing that the things they do in their classroom every day and the conversations that they have with their kids is also data that guides their decisions on how they do instruction. And so it's the larger scale modeling and then the classroom modeling and helping teachers realize they're already doing those pieces. And that, yeah.
Yeah. And if I'd had all day, because I think I've got 70 more slides, we would have gotten there, right? But I ended it where I ended it because it starts with identity, it starts with belonging. We all said that today. But I'm glad that Kathy Yan can tell you he's not bullshitting. We are actually on a data literacy journey, and it's a lot more involved than just identity. But you can go see it for yourself on the website.
Hi.
Yep.
I have a question. I was just curious, why are some staff not self-identifying? Are you talking about newcomers or First Nations or just any ethnic group?
Any ethnic group. And I think I have more of our BIPOC, IBIPOC staff community identifying than I do those who don't identify as IBIPOC.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Because to talk about an anti-racism initiative is hard work. You get called out in a thought exchange about building a 23-24 budget. Why are you spending money on a DEI and anti-racism initiative when you should be spending money on teachers and an EA for my child? But I'm afraid that EA, without a DEI and anti-racism initiative, isn't going to be able to do much.
Data fearing. Talk to me about how data are used fairly or unfairly for accountability, for teacher accountability, principal accountability, so on.
Well, it's that spotlight versus hammer, right? Analogy that I used earlier on. So my greatest fear is that when in this data literacy initiative is to use the data in ways that look more like a hammer than a spotlight, and to quickly jump to judgment and start to belittle teachers and educational assistants and undermining their integrity and their desire to grow and learn. I want us to see data I want people to see that our efforts here are shining a spotlight on data. It should make us inquisitive, always asking questions, always avoiding judgments, asking more, digging deeper, and agreeing to start with what are we trying to solve? What's the problem we're trying to solve? And we're all in it together. And so these are the dynamics at play that we're constantly responding to, and the culture that we're trying to nurture, and the traps we're trying to avoid falling into.
Thank you, Christian. That was data-licious. Yeah.